Welcome, everyone, to the Evolving Man podcast. My name is Alain and I'm the founder of The Awakened Man. As we continue 2021's theme of reclaim, retool, and respond, and we dive deep into the second quarter, and our theme for the second quarter has been ignition, igniting our passion, our purpose, and our power. And so June's focus on that is all about grit and developing grit in order for us to live an igniting life. And so before we get into that, I want to remind you of our Brotherhood, the band of brothers. This is our community of strong, resilient men, where each man's dedicated not only to his growth, but the growth of his brothers. Currently, we're on a bit of a hiatus. I'm retooling the program, and I look forward to bringing that back to fruition in the near future, but more on that down the road. In the meantime, if you're interested in raising the level of your standards, either as a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, then I can encourage you to participate in our Hero's Quest. It's a 90-day mentoring program that's guaranteed to raise at least one aspect of your life. You can find all of this at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members, that's plural, members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's show.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life. Many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Luckily, throughout history, there exists a few good men we can look to for guidance. Strong, confident, driven. Men who weren't afraid to face the greatest tyrant they've ever known, their minds. Forged in the fire of their shadows, these men knew who they were at their core. Solid in their convictions, owners of their reality. Men of action, strength, and character. Masters of their destiny. Today's man is no different. The hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve them or the world. There's never been a better time than today for men to stand up and claim their stake. It's time to reconnect to your life purpose, evolving into husbands and fathers our wives and children deserve, becoming masters of our life and the leaders of our homes and community. Ever evolving, today's man is assured he is aligned for greatness. Welcome to the movement. Stay strong, my brother.
All right, gentlemen. Well, welcome again to the show. Today, we're going to get into a really great topic. And before we're getting into there, I just want to set up with a couple of questions for you, as we typically do here at the Evolving Man podcast. And the first question I have for you to consider is, do you have the balls to the wall mentality? So do you have the grit to see your passions through? And if not, what if there was a simple process that you could implement to help you develop that grit? Would that be of something of interest to you? I think if you said yes to either of those questions or both, then pay attention. I think today's podcast is going to bring a lot of value to you for sure. So, over the past little while, I've been thinking about how to provide more clarity about what the Awakened Man is all about. And, when I started to take a really close look at it, it was hard to see the forest for the trees. Have you ever had that experience, where you know something so passionately, so deeply inside of yourself, but you kind of fumble with getting it out and getting it articulated so that other people understand what you're doing? They may feel it from you, but they may not necessarily understand. I know I get that every once in a while for sure. So as I started to look at everything that was happening and has happened in my life, and I started to distill what the core aspects of what it means to be an awakened man, I started to look back at my journey. I revisited some old biographies of great leaders that I had read before, the lessons learned from the past that they learned as well as my own. And so I came up with these 4 things that an awakened man will lack. And until he understands what he's lacking, it's hard for him to make a change. And so when you think about these, and I let you know what the four lacks are, individually, they may not seem that big. Each one individually doesn't necessarily make a great change in life. But when we combine them and you look at how intertwined they are and interconnected, they can really determine the direction of our lives. And so I want to spend the rest of this podcast talking about what the 4 things that we lack in life and the antidotes for each one of them. And so the first thing that we lack as men is we lack commitment. And I know what you're thinking. That's not me, man. Like, I'm committed to my life. I'm committed to my career, to my wife, my family, and community. And I would agree. Most men definitely are committed. And I'm one of those guys as well, totally committed to each of those areas. But see, that's the easy stuff. To do things around the house, to put in a good day's work, spending our time with our family and our friends, and when time permits, helping within the community. Hey, those are all things that show that, yes, we are committed to our families, our friends, our peers, and our work. But the kind of commitment that I'm talking about, the one that we lack, is being committed to doing the hard things. It's about having the hard conversations with loved ones that we like, about the things that we like and that we don't like. It's about having that talk with your boss or your employees about your expectations and how you or they fit into the big plan. It's about having the hard talk with your friends when you don't agree with something, or when they've said something that has been offside and you're just not on the same page with them. That doesn't mean that we don't care about people, and it doesn't mean that we're staking that we don't care about them or we don't care about where they're going. But what it does mean is that we are staking a claim on who we are, what we will stand for, and what we won't stand for. See, if we're not committed to at least achieving our goals, then at least not the big ones, then what are we focusing on? And see, and that's the other thing that we lack in our commitment. See, if we focus on the goals that stretch and force us to grow, then we're now truly being committed to growing who we are as men. Now, listen, you may be the type of guy that sits there and says, look, I'm committed to going to the gym, working out, eating healthy, yada, 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 all that good stuff. But that's the easy thing for you. We all have that easy part in our life where we can be easily committed to doing it. What I'm saying is, what part of your life do you struggle with that you're not as committed to being better at? That's the area that we need to focus on, that we're not committed to. So maybe it's in the terms of finance and money. Maybe you're not as committed to, like, you make plans, you make budgets, you say you're going to plan for retirement in the future, but guess what? The plan never really gets executed. Maybe you say that you're not as present with your wife and your children. Now, trust me, there's going to be an area in your life, in one of the 6 pillars of life, that you're probably not as committed to as you need to be. See, and that's where the work that needs to get done. And if we raise the level in that part of our life, then we raise the level in other parts of our life. Remember the saying, a rising tide raises all ships. You see, the other thing we're not committed to is we're not really committed to ourselves. Sure, just like I said earlier, we may be committed to going to the gym, and that's great. But what about the rest of our life? Are we committed to building a new habits and skills? Couldn't you learn to read faster with better comprehension? What about learning to cook or doing carpentry or some other skill set? The point is that we usually go back and do the things that are easy for us because they are easy. To get truly committed to ourselves means we want to focus on developing skills and a mindset for learning new things that challenge and stretch us in order to be better men. And the last area, not necessarily the last, but one of the other big key ones where we're not necessarily committed, is to our marriages. And boy, I can hear the chatter already. Listen, if you're getting the thought process that this is a lack area in your area, then it's about being committed. Then I want you to think about being committed to the hard things in your marriage. Listen, I'm pretty sure every man on this call is going to say, I'm committed to my wife. I love her and I do everything I can for her. And of course we do, gentlemen. What I'm asking here is, are you committed to your marriage by having the hard conversations around money, around sex, and around spirituality, just to name 3? Like, are you ready to hear the things that your spouse says that she doesn't necessarily like or appreciate about you? You see, all of us have things that we don't care about our partners. Like, I like to say to my wife, I love you dearly, Kim, but there are times that I do love you, Kim, but there are times I just don't like you. Hey, and that's okay to say. If we can't have a real conversation with our spouses, then we have a problem that's going to be brewing under the surface, and if left unattended will end up destroying our marriages. Okay, so what's the second thing that we lack? The second thing we lack is clarity. See, we don't necessarily know what we want out of life. We don't know what we want out of our marriage, our work, or our friends. We may think we know what we want, like money, companionship, stability, and friendship. Those are important for sure, and without a doubt are the reason that these people are in our lives. The kind of clarity that I'm thinking of is the clarity of deciding of who we are as men. So do you know why you're in the career that you're in? Do you know why you're still married to the same woman? Do you know why you chose to have children? Do each of these things and more make up who you are as a man? Of course they do. See, and I suggest that most men, and I'm one of those guys, couldn't answer any of those questions more than at a service level. See, we struggle to stitch the important aspects of our lives into a coherent and clear representation of who we are. Okay, the third thing that we lack. And the third thing that we lack is a compass. And look, we may very well have a compass, but do we know how to use it? See, what is your true North Star? See, our compasses are broken because we cannot define what our destination/our destiny is. Instead, most of us meander through life with fleeting thoughts about how great retirement would be, but we haven't taken the time to determine what it will take to get there and what we all have to do in order to execute that plan. Having a compass first without being committed and without having clarity is as useful as getting in your car with a full tank of gas and driving around until you run out of fuel and then wondering, where the hell am I and how did I get here? See, and I realize as we start to implement any of these antidotes that these lacks, the lack of a map especially, will not be drawn up for us. And well, at least not for all of it. We'll have some idea. And remember, we can go back on great autobiographies and other experiences of our life. But in the end, it is our experiences. And so it won't be exactly like someone else's. But we can use those experiences to help us navigate through the rough waters that will come ahead. And trust me, there's going to be some rough waters. And so what's the final thing that we lack? Well, the final thing that we lack is we lack a community. See, our community is usually made up of friends, of men who are close friends and associates. And this is a good thing on the surface. A good friend is there to help you through thick and thin. I know I've had a couple of buddies that were there at my darkest moments, and thank goodness that they were there. But sometimes our community is just made up of buddies where we play with sports with, whether that be hockey or baseball or whatever your favorite sport may be. Again, these are great relationships for us to have, and we should have them. And other times, our community can be made up of people that attend our churches, our synagogues, or mosques. And again, these are great relationships for us to be involved in. The question I ask, though, is what kind of community are you surrounding yourself with? Do any of these men succeed in their businesses, their marriages, their families? Are they pillars of the community? Do they challenge you when you're offside on something? Do they offer mentorship and guidance or even a different perspective? What kind of conversations are you having when you get together with these men? You see, having a community is more than just hanging with the boys. Listen, that was fine in the first couple of decades while we were on this planet. And let's face it, at that time, what the hell did we know back then? Not a lot. So we were just hanging out. There wasn't an abundance of men who exemplified who we thought we wanted to be around, unless they were, of course, a sports icon or a movie icon. At least that was my upbringing. And that's not to slight that the fathers that we had in our lives weren't great men, but let's also face a reality here that many of our fathers just didn't have the internal understanding of what it meant to grow and be as a man because of who they learned from. The point I'm trying to make here is that we need a deeper connection from men who have been through the weeds and come out as better men. We need a community of men who will not only support and lift us on our journey, but also kick us in the pants when we need it. We lack that kind of a community. Okay, so now we know the 4 things that we lack. So what are their antidotes? Well, if you want to be committed, then you need to figure one thing out. What is your purpose? What is your why for doing anything in this life? By defining our why, we start to put things in motions for what we will stand for and what we won't. what is relevant and what is irrelevant in our life, what gives us meaning and what pulls us away from living a purposeful life. To gain clarity, we need to take our purpose a little bit deeper by considering who it is we want to become. What are the attributes and the virtues that define us as men? We may not share all the same virtues, and that's okay. The key is to determine what is important for ourselves. So how do we do that? Well, here's a simple way in order for us to gain clarity. And you do it by completing this sentence. I am the kind of man who, and then fill in the rest with the attributes of the men that you see yourself as, the man you see yourself as. Remember, we're going to state this in the present and not something that we're going to attain. And we already embody these attributes today. So again, complete the sentence by saying, I am the kind of man who, and then fill in that blank. And that helps provide clarity for our purpose. Okay, so now you have a clear purpose. Your compass is ready to get dialed into your vision. That is the next antidote. By creating compelling vision for who you are, where you are, and what you aspire to become. Your vision then becomes your true North Star. With purpose, clarity, and vision, you can create the tactics and strategies that ultimately lead to an empowering life. Your compass is finely tuned now to your destiny. And finally, of course, we revisit our community and we transform them into a tribe or a brotherhood. I always liked Jim Rohn. He was a great mentor of mine, I would say. And he was fond of saying, we become the average of the 5 people we hang around the most. So who are those 5 people going to be? Some may already be there. Others may get left behind, and still others are just around the corner. So how are you going to find your tribe, or better still, a brotherhood? Well, you start by having those hard conversations I mentioned earlier with the current circle of influence that you have. Those that support you could be part of that brotherhood. Those that challenge you may also be part of that brotherhood. The key is that are they on the same path as you are currently going? If not, it's a good indication that time spent with them will need to be managed. And if that sounds harsh, well, there is an alternative. You can remain being weak and soft and then complain about the cards that you were dealt with. In the end, nothing's going to change. And for finding others, all it takes is for you to look around you. Men's personal development groups have never been more popular than they are today. Look, here's a few of some of the top ones that I am aware of and have participated in. There's the Order of Man with Ryan Mickler. Outstanding work that Ryan's doing. Garrett J. White and his movement with Wake Up Warrior is another outstanding program. The Samurai Brotherhood by Phil Misselberger, this Canadian gentleman, is doing amazing work as well. The Mankind Project, of course, has been around for decades. Every Man without the extra E is another outstanding group of men. And of course, the Awakened Man, which is why I've created this program to help men live and grow and live purposeful lives. I'll say that there's dozens for you to choose from. The point here is to check a few out, find out which ones fit and which ones don't fit. Then get involved and start to participate. Here's the thing. You really have 2 choices. You can continue to go at it alone and try to figure this shit out on your own, or you can do the hard thing and ask for help. It's time to lean into your destiny. Look, we grew a pair a long time ago, didn't we? Time now is to stop playing with them and to start using them. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you really want support in executing the antidotes to the 4 things that we lack, then I recommend joining the Awakened Man community and our Band of Brothers men's circle. We offer a structured group format that guides men to living meaningful and purposeful lives. The men that flourish are those that are ready to take responsibility for where they are today, who they are today, and who they aspire to become. If that sounds like something like someone like you, then I would look forward to seeing you in our brotherhood. Thanks for joining me today. Aho, my brothers.
Thank you for listening to the Evolving Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? to become more the man you are destined to be? Join the Brotherhood that is, the Awakened Man, at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.